exciting is this? Welcome to the second edition of the Happy Event Planner. My name's Oliver. I'm head of content and community at Sweep. And yeah, this is exciting. We are actually in the metaverse. I'm very happy that you're all here. I see more and more people joining throughout the process, so that's really great. Who are we? We are the Happy Event Planner. We're a community and an event series for global event planners and event professionals. And well, this is our task to educate you in the most exciting new trends and stuff that's happening out there in the industry. And to be honest, I don't think it gets more exciting than this, what we have today, at least when you look into the news and take a look at what's happening in the event scene. I think the metaverse is quite high up there. So really stoked to have you here. And equally stoked to have my two guests here. On the one side, Danny Stefanic, who, to be very honest, is definitely one of the big evangelists in the whole scene when it comes to metaverse. Danny, I'll start with you. Could you just introduce yourself with a few words?
Yeah, sure. Pleasure to be here. And thanks so much, Oliver, for having us. And everyone in the audience, thank you for joining us. My name is Danny Stefanic. I'm the CEO of MootUp, which is the virtual events platform. But also, I'm a sort of veteran of the virtual reality industry, way back to starting the Virtual Reality Association back in 1994. So I've been around the block a few times here. So I've got a lot of advice and lessons learned. Hopefully I can share them with you today.
Lovely, thank you, Danny. And we have a second very special guest today on my left side in this case. This is Steffen Ronft. Steffen Ronft is an event psychologist, author and researcher. And Steffen, what input and view and special insights are you going to give us today in combination with the metaverse?
Okay, thank you. I'm also happy to be here. So my mission is to combine the psychology, the psychology and the event management knowledge, and to find new perspectives how to improve events, and that's in a physical event and also in the metaverse for sure.
Obviously, I think we have a very interesting combination here, obviously, because someone who's actually built this platform and been in this world for such a long time, and someone who can explain a little bit about the psychological background and what it does in the brain of the participants, etc., etc. So very, very interesting combination. Before we start, just a few words of advice to everyone out there. You have the chance to ask questions during the event. Everyone who's in our virtual event platform, on the right side, you're going to find a question, a Q&A area. So please just type in any kind of questions that you have throughout the event. And also we have a polls area, and I think we're just going to start with a little warm-up poll to get everyone excited. So everyone should see the very first question now, and this one is, do you think you would behave differently in the metaverse than at a physical event? So if you could just take a second, everybody, and just answer that question for us. I see the first answers coming in. Fantastic. So this was a question that Steffen gave us. Obviously, we see the event psychology background here. I suppose very interesting data that we can collect here, and also a topic that we're going to be speaking about in a moment with you, Steffen. So I'll just leave this running while the answers are coming in. I see there's still a lot moving. We have over 30 answers already. Fantastic. Just for everyone who's not seeing any scores, you have to participate to be able to see the actual scores. So please take a moment and just give us a click there. While the answers are coming in, I think we can start with you, Danny, as you are the house owner here and invited us nicely enough into this beautiful space. There might be a few people in the crowd that actually haven't experienced the metaverse events right now and maybe haven't heard a lot about the topic yet, and that's why they're here. So I just start off with a simple question. What is the metaverse and what's the history of it? Because it's not been here since yesterday, I can say that much. And yeah, why are we sitting in this space today and in this area?
Yeah, that's a great lot of questions, actually, and something I could probably talk about for a few hours, but let's try and keep it really short. So the metaverse as a concept has been around since the early days of the internet. Way back then it was called cyberspace. And actually the whole idea of the internet becoming a place or a space was represented in the terminology we even use for websites or surfing the web or information superhighway, as it was called at one stage. There's lots of metaphors about the internet being a space. So the idea has always been there, and quite attractive idea. People fall in love with that idea, but the technology and the capabilities haven't been there until recently. Now we've got 3D available in all the different browsers on different devices, from your phones and tablets all the way up to virtual reality. And that is now becoming more mainstream, just like video became mainstream on the internet and changed everything as well. So the metaverse is really, in my mind, not necessarily games or self-contained virtual worlds, but inevitably I see it as a web of worlds. Just like we have websites, each company, organization, or a person will have their own 3D environments or sites, and they'll be connected to other environments by virtue of who you want to connect to. So instead of having one landscape like a city where you have people building houses next door to other houses, instead it'll be hyperdimensional, linked like we link websites. I'll link to your site because we have a relationship, or I want to share what you're doing, and that's the way these worlds will connect. And I can talk more about that later, but this is something that's actually happening right now. And it's, as everyone can see here, it's available just in normal web browser. So very accessible.
Okay, perfect. I just got in a question that I think fits very well from the audience, from an anonymous participant. What exactly do you mean when talking about the metaverse? In case of this event, is it the 3D virtual platform, or does it mean any virtual environment? So how can you define exactly what the metaverse is?
Yeah, well, let's look at what's happening in the media at the moment. There's really three different things that are being called the metaverse. One is entertainments and games, things like Roblox or Sandbox, or even games like Fortnite, because they're a 3D world that you can go in and socialize, but also play at the same time. These are being called the metaverse. And so I call that the metaverse for entertainment. Then we have the blockchain community, which are jumping on the bandwagon as well with things like NFTs and 3D assets, those sorts of things, and definitely attaching value to those and being able to trade and exchange value and creating smart contracts and those sorts of things, all falling under the term of metaverse, or is being adopted by that community for that purpose. And then there's the third one, which I call the metaverse for business, which is what we're in here, which is using the 3D environments for creating virtual headquarters, for creating meetings, for doing self-paced learning and training in virtual reality environments, and the 3D media type really making it onto the web and providing value across small to medium-sized businesses, professionals, and enterprises. The three are ultimately on a course for convergence, and most people are calling this Web 3 or Web 3.0, and encompasses all these components. But at the moment, they're sitting in different sort of areas, but inevitably they're on a collision course to come together. Well, not a collision course, a convergence, let's call it. And that's where really amazing things are going to happen. But we're a few years till we get to that state, but it is certainly an exciting thing to be involved in right now.
Absolutely. I think also, especially for the event industry, which our participants are mainly from, there's been a lot of development in bringing events into the metaverse. This was my very first contact with the metaverse as well. I can say a bit about that later on. But in your eyes, like what impact up to now has the metaverse had on the event industry, and which direction are we going in the next few years, considering live events are coming back and people really want to get back into this in-person world? Which space will the metaverse take in the event industry in the future?
Well, I think that you've hit the nail on the head when you're even talking about going back to face-to-face events. The real thing that people crave and the thing that we get value from is these face-to-face meetings and the ability to build relationships that are not necessarily just me going and watching a presenter or a conference speaker, but it's what one of my associates calls the hallway track, right? So you've got different tracks going on at a summit, but the hallway track is where you just run into people in between sessions and you have conversations, you start to build relationships, and they're really valuable, and they're memories that you take away from the event, and you'll go back to them again and again. So I think that part of events has really been missing. And this is something that the metaverse, when we use it like we are today, has the capability of achieving. A lot of things are being called the metaverse, but generally I say to people, if you could watch a recording of an event and it would be exactly the same as having been there, then that's not a metaverse event, because each person at a metaverse event has their own perspective, their own unique journey that they're taking with an avatar or a video avatar. And so each person has a unique journey. And if you're not having that, if it's just a screen with a video recording and maybe chat on the side, or maybe a grid of 49 video thumbnails, that's not an immersive event. You need it to be in the same space, have a shared experience, and your experience be unique. And that leads to the opportunity to run into somebody, have a conversation, these things that we like from face-to-face events. But I do think that with more events coming back, there's also hybrid, which is combining the two. So the remote participants can have that engagement, and so to the people in the real world environment. And there's ways to cross that over and bridge the two audiences together in some ways, using, for example, 360 video cameras on site, broadcasting like we are now, and also things like holograms, where we project the person using video from the conference space into the 3D environment as if they're standing on the stage. All these things, kind of create a digital connection to a real world or physical event.
Absolutely. Steffen, I saw you nodding your head quite intensively. Yeah. What's your idea of how the metaverse shapes the events and the participants and the journey that we go through when we visit a metaverse event? Please share.
Yeah, I think the most important point is the interaction. So like Danny said, when you can watch a recording, that is an event. An event is not a live stream where you're just passively consume things. So an event is something active. So you have to interact, and you have different opportunities, what you want to do and what you can do. And when you're in a metaverse, you can dance, for example, you can hug people or whatever. So all the things we did before here on the stage. And yes, great, Oliver. And that are the things that make an event and unique event. So I think this is the most interesting point from the psychology perspective on that. It has to be unique, and if you not there, then you have missed it. So that's an event.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I might just add something to that. I mean, it can be something really tiny that adds to engagement. And in this case, it could just be as simple as clicking and dragging to look around, changing your perspective, even slightly, is a way of engaging and keeping people attentive. Generally, I call this lean forward interaction, whereas most events are what I'd call lean back, where you just sit back and watch and maybe you lose attention and do other things. But this lean forward engagement, even if it's tiny, is enough to keep people engaged and have higher retention.
Mm-hmm. And at this point, I can bring in the results of the poll, if it's okay. Because that's very interesting, because 50% of our participants said, okay, they would be more passive in a metaverse event than in a physical event. So that's an interesting thing. So why this is that way? Maybe that's an effect called ambiguity effect. So if you don't know what to do, what are your opportunities, what are your challenges you have to manage there, then you lean back and better do nothing than do something wrong. So maybe it's an interesting thing that if we get more familiar with events in the metaverse, then we will be more active there. I think so. That's just a prediction by me.
I think I can support that prediction. From our experience. We found that people using avatars actually a little more confident. So because they're not presenting themselves on camera necessarily like we are, you have the option in the platform, but they are able to kind of not hide behind their avatar, but not be impacted by doing their changes. So I'm in real life probably not the best dancer, but if I want to with my avatar, I can do stuff that actually physically at the moment I'm probably not able to do. So these sorts of things can make you look good and can be fun. So the avatar is let's say a bit of a shield from your true self can actually help in letting people be a bit more outgoing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that it can really empower people. Even if you think on disabled people, for example, it's much easier to have an inclusive event where everybody can take part and be the same. So gender, age, or race, whatever, skin color doesn't matter, because it's just an avatar and you can design it by your own, and you get treated like your avatar. So you don't get judged by your skin color or whatever, but maybe happen in a real life event.
Yeah, this is true. Actually, sorry, Ollie, but just quickly, a story. With one of our other virtual worlds, a game, we actually had a lovely letter from one of our users that said that they were wheelchair bound. And they loved the platform because they could engage and meet other people socially. But more than anything, they loved the fact that they could dance with their avatar. It gave them a sense of freedom that they otherwise couldn't have. Really touching letter, and loved to hear those sorts of things. So there are some very different opportunities using these platforms that you may not have considered before.
Yeah.
Mm. Breaking down boundaries, and also this idea of the second life. I mean, it's this whole Sims Second Life movement. It's been around for such a long time, and this idea of just recreating yourself differently in another space and just seeing how people react to you, give you comments on your avatars. I mean, this is something that you wouldn't find in a normal event. For the participants, just to let you know, there's a second poll because we heard the word avatar. So if you want to let us know your opinion on that, we'd be very grateful. Danny, another question in your direction. What kind of events is the metaverse useful for? I mean, what we're doing now, we could have done it in a Zoom call through our beautiful Sweep platform as well. It would have had an effect on the people. Definitely, they would have consumed content with value. How would you recommend one of your clients to maybe not do an event in the metaverse, or what type of events do you especially recommend it for?
Yeah, it depends what your goals are for any event, right? How much time do you have? What are you trying to get across? And really, you start with the outcome in mind. What do you want at the end for people to take away? What knowledge do you want them to have? What experience do you want them to have had? And that work backwards from there. So I don't say 3D is the technology for everything. It's use it where appropriate as a tool. The thing that is most important with a platform like this is engagement. So if you want people to have a memorable experience, retain more of what they saw, heard, or have them able to network and interact with other people instead of being an invisible audience, which is what we get in products like Zoom and others. People are relegated to just the chat on the right-hand side. So they're basically invisible. The tools are great for presenters. Like through the pandemic, I'm so glad we had all these mature video conferencing tools for people to present. They've been fantastic. But the audience has otherwise been just invisible, and that's what you can change by using platforms like this. Definitely, it's worth considering. And also, we're at a new point in time where this can be delivered in a browser. Before, you had to download and install apps. People in government, education, enterprise can't download and install things as they wish. There's usually policies around that. But now we can just open a web browser, go to a link. I can share it in social media, and suddenly we're in a space together. That changes the access to people going into these experiences dramatically.
Absolutely. Steffen, do you have anything to add to that?
Oh, I think it's perfect. It's quite a perfect answer.
Okay, great. Maybe you can shed a bit of light on the psychological background of what happens in the participant when they consume this way instead of consuming in the classic virtual event way, meaning just as Danny just described, output from a speaker, you're an invisible person in there. What happens in our heads? Why are we so excited about this topic?
Yeah, because you have the opportunity to do things. So humans want to decide. So you want a part of freedom where you can decide what you want to do. And Metaverse allows that. When you're just being a part of a Zoom call or something, you're just here to sit here and listen to it, and maybe can ask a question, but that's it. But if you have the chance to empower your creativity and to do things and to be yourself or to be another person you aren't be at the moment, yeah, that are the very interesting things for humans. When you think of computer games, why there are World of Warcraft, you named it, Fortnite and so on, why they are so popular? Because you can be who you want and you can develop yourself. Yeah, you can educate yourself, you can level up yourself, whatever that means. Yeah, in a game, it's for sure different than in a learning environment. But that are the things that people want to do, and that are the benefit you get when you participate at the event like this event, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think gamification is a really interesting aspect. So we see that in all sorts of platforms, even traditional video conferencing platforms have elements of that. The idea that people can master something and get rewarded for it, whether that's points on a leaderboard or a new T-shirt or hat for your avatar that you can show off. These are things that are great. We see it especially in sales conferences and sales summits. The salespeople love that sort of stuff. Competing in other sorts of events, competing for points on a leaderboard isn't so much the thing. It's more individual achievements, like going on a scavenger hunt and collecting things throughout a space, rather than competing against other people. And there is a certain level of mastery in these 3D environments as well. You can learn new skills, like I saw in the chat. Evgenia was asking, how did I do that dance move? They really wanted to know, so that they can do that now because I've shared how to do that. So there is this idea of learning new skills and adding to what your capabilities are in steps. And that's what gamification is really good at. And it delivers a high level of engagement, but also a high level of satisfaction for a user, that they're expanding their capabilities. And I think that's a really powerful attractor for the events, but also remember, all of that creates psychological hooks to the event itself. The atmosphere around, the people you're meeting, and the content you're consuming now have many more associations in your brain, so the recall of that is much, much higher.
Yeah, but we have to say there's also a dark side on it. Maybe the FOMO effect, the fear of missing out. So when you have a parallel universe running, so when you have a second life in your metaverse, then you want to be part in the real life, and you want to be a part in the second life, I call it, in the parallel universe, and then that's going to be stress you, because you have to handle two worlds. So that can be the dark side of a very immersive metaverse.
This goes obviously way beyond the event industry. This is like a general issue I've read about various times when I've read about the metaverse in general. So I think as every trend, as every digital transformation that we go through, and this definitely can be seen as a digital transformation, it has its ups and downs. And at the end, I think it's us as event producers and software producers, and also event psychologists, obviously, to guide people through this process, because everything that's new is kind of scary, but also kind of exciting. So I think we all have a part of responsibility in the game there. I'd like to add another question from the crowd. Danny, you mentioned hybrid events before. Linda Wong, thanks for posting, Linda, asked, can you impact the hybrid experience? Many people are craving connection, and there is a lot of digital fatigue, as we know. We're seeing a lot of people getting away from anything digital. So how does a person whose life interact with someone digitally, I suppose, especially in the metaverse, or rather, how do you attract a person like this? So maybe we break that down to basically, Danny, can you maybe give us a little bit of a case study or an example how a metaverse hybrid concept would work out there?
Yeah, sure. I can give a great example that's being used commonly now. So everyone's familiar with setting up a camera at a physical event, pointing it at the stage, and then sending that stream online for people to watch on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, LinkedIn Live, etc. So that's pretty common. And that's again, a lecture-based kind of will broadcast at you, and you can watch it. And if you're lucky, you can ask some questions. Another way to do that is to use 360 video cameras on site, or one or two, depending on how big the space is. So a 360 camera, it operates exactly the same way, except that the camera has a 360-degree lens on it, and it can see in every direction. And then that gets sent online to a space like this. And instead of having the 3D room, the auditorium we have around us now, we are actually at a point in the physical environment. We can look around, we can see the speakers on the stage, we can see the physical audience behind us, or we're seated next to them. But also we can see other virtual participants with their avatars right around us. So the remote audience, the physical audience can kind of be blended together, and the remote audience can whisper, they can ask questions through the Q&A, they can be part of polls, as can the physical audience with their mobile devices. They can respond to polls. So you can have both sets of audience contributing to the same event, but also seeing the remote audience, seeing the physical audience through that 360-degree environment. And as part of best practices, we also recommend to put a screen that the physical audience can see that of the remote audience in attendance. So this gives both audiences cognitive awareness of the other, and this leads to a more integrated hybrid event. And it's very easy and cheap to produce. So that's just one example. There are others that I can share, other what I call recipes for hybrid events. But we can get more and more creative using these types of technologies than just a straight video stream.
Absolutely. Linda, I hope that answered your question. I hear a lot of technological elements to this, especially in the hybrid world. As we know, hybrid does require a lot of budget usually. In general, Danny, Metaverse events, what kind of budget are we talking about to even start thinking about putting an event in the Metaverse? Is it extremely unaffordable for small events or even free events, or is it something where it's getting cheaper, easier, and more accessible through the time as it's developing?
It depends on how big your event is. So we're a commercial platform. We're not a free platform or as cheap as something like Zoom, but we offer far more advantages. One of the advantages is that everything's configurable. So you can go into the platform. If you have the skills of making a PowerPoint presentation or a keynote presentation, you'll be happy using this type of product because you can drag and drop everything anywhere, drop your logos in. So you have the capacity to really customize the environment as you wish. There are templates that exist for virtual expo halls, trade shows, breakout meeting rooms, fireside chats, galleries. All those things are already ready to roll. So there's very little work to be involved. You can just customize them. But the events in the way we run them, we count on the amount of time that the event's running for and the number of concurrent participants that might be in the event. It might be a smaller event for a couple of hundred people, and your price range might be something between 5,000 and 15,000 for the event for a day, and then it goes up to major events, with 5,000, 6,000, 10,000 people coming in, and it's running as an event that's a week long, where people can jump in and out throughout that period in multiple sessions. The great thing here is you're not limited by real estate. You can have 10 different auditoriums running in parallel, have sessions in them. If you want to add another one, you just add it. The venue is infinitely scalable. So this is something that's pretty exciting and fun to take use of. But yeah, the budgets, I'd say, the lowest we get is around 5K, and then some of the major events are, half a million sort of size.
Mm-hmm. Follow-up question there. We're not just in the metaverse right now. We're surrounded by a beautiful virtual event platform that's produced by Sweep. How important is the combination of a stable guest management system, a stable invitation system, where you can have unlimited reach to find the people that actually want to join the event, in combination with this digital experience? How can this be combined, and why is it so important to combine the two?
Well, I think most people are realizing now, from having run events through the pandemic, that we've shifted from just having one-off events where you do all this work, you have an event and then it's over and everyone's forgotten about it, to really the idea, and people are starting to change their titles in event management around this, being the idea of a community. So what you're doing is not just trying to have one touch point with a person at an event, but to continue that relationship ongoing. And one of the beautiful things about these environments is they're persistent. So if you, for instance, if you go into a room and do a whiteboarding session and sticky notes, those sorts of things, they'll just be there the same way they were the day before. So you can come in and change things and update them. The same for, branded meeting spaces. So you can come back in, have another networking session or mini micro event. Those are all possible in these persistent spaces. So I think that is great, but you need something to manage that community, to be in touch with people, let them know things are happening in the traditional feeds that they get, their email, their social channels. They need to know that things are happening. And without that, you can't really engage a community or keep them alive. You have to have that pulse. And a community management system is essential for keeping that audience alive and engaged.
Mm-hmm. And I think this is exactly where this platform comes in, and the combination of the two just really, really make it into a long-lasting, engaging experience, just not on the event day and then it gets forgotten, but you can continue staying in contact with the people and really, as you already said, build a community around it. Perfect, thank you very much. I will go back to the questions from the audience. One interesting one by Johannes. Thank you, Johannes, for sharing. What differentiates metaverses from another? I guess you can argue that PC games already created metaverses like World of Warcraft or even a server in Minecraft. What makes the difference between them and the new ones? Danny, this, I suppose, would be in your direction again.
Yeah, I think the easy way to discern if something is, as the term is being used everywhere, metaverse is just in a lot of cases meaning a 3D environment where you can step into and move around. But for me, having spent nearly 30 years in this industry, for me, the metaverse is actually something much more open that anyone can create their own world with and deploy it online, just like anyone can make their own website and start to create opportunities around it. That is, for me, what the metaverse eventually will be. So these games are great places, but if you want to make changes or build something of your own, you're kind of restricted to the toolbox that they give you. Whereas the web is an open, unlimited toolbox. Our platform here is integrated with 40 different enterprise platforms. It drops right into Sweep, for example, integrates seamlessly and works great. So that was possible. It's only a small matter of steps for us to build that great relationship. So these sorts of things being possible are something that games platforms don't provide. They're walled gardens. They're sandboxes you can play within. And another great thing about web is the idea that you can walk from one world to another. We've got thousands of clients with their own private virtual worlds or metaverses. And what I'm seeing in the last year is that they're starting to connect up. So people are connecting their virtual world to another organization's virtual world. So they'll walk out of one meeting space, their virtual headquarters, into somebody else's. And that sort of capability is really interesting. And each site can control who they want in. They can have their own login. We support single sign-on, for example. So if you've got a corporate login, you go through and bring your avatar with you. So I think games are definitely an important part of the metaverse for entertainment. And as I said, they're on convergence course, that they'll eventually be something that come together, and you'll be able to walk from this environment off into World of Warcraft or whatever game it is that's metaverse compatible. You probably won't have the same avatar as you go across. And one of my colleagues has been describing a really, really great solution to that, which is instead of storing just the avatar, you store the traits, maybe your eye color, your hairstyle, attributes like that. So when you do go across and you're suddenly an orc, you're an orc, but with elements of you, right, in World of Warcraft. And that's a much better solution because maybe some business meetings you don't want to turn up to as an orc. Maybe if it's a negotiation deal, maybe you do. But in most cases, we want to keep the avatar appropriate to the context.
Perfect, thank you, Danny. Steffen, back to you. At the beginning, when we started talking about this event and what value you could add to our participants, I heard various effects. I heard an uncanny effect, I heard the scarcity effect, and so on. So back to the brain function and back to how we work as human beings. What are these effects? What do they mean? And what do they mean when I plan an event like this, the role of an event planner? What do I have to keep in mind, and how can I use these effects for my benefit?
Yeah. So I will start with the so-called scarcity effect. That means if something has a limited amount of it, then it's more attractive to people to have it. So that's it. So quite easy effect. So if something is limited, it's more attractive. So we have to keep that in mind in metaverse events in two different perspectives. The one perspective is something Danny already mentioned, is called NFTs, so non-fungible tokens. So you have some digital thing, whatever it is, music or a picture or whatever, and this is limited, it's unique. So maybe some people pay $2 million for a picture of an ape. Why not? If you want to do, you can. So this is attractive because it's limited. On the other hand, Danny also mentioned the metaverse isn't limited at its own. So you can extend it to infinity if you want to. But that is something you have to keep in mind when you sell tickets, for example, for a metaverse event. If anybody who wants can join, then it's less attractive than it's a limited amount of tickets there. So even if you plan a virtual event, think of to limit your tickets and say, okay, just 500 tickets are available, and that makes the event more exclusive and more attractive. So that's something about the scarcity effect and why it's relevant for the metaverse. Another effect you called is the uncanny valley or uncanny cliff effect. That's very interesting when we think of the visualization of things. So some people ask me, hey, why metaverse looks like a computer game in the early 2000s? Yeah, for sure. That's sometimes it is. Yeah, it isn't photorealistic. Why? There are for sure technical limitations, but there are another psychological perspective on it. If you see something that is photorealistic, then you have the expectation that it behaves like the real life, and that won't be. So if you meet an avatar like here, that's pretty clear that's at this avatar maybe a gesture or a little bit of facial expression, but no micro expressions. So you won't expect that this face will react like the real face of your real person. And the uncanny valley effect means that you have to go through this uncanny valley. So stay at a part where it's clear it's artificial, it's a comic style or whatever, and I have the expectations that will react like a robot or like a comic figure or something like that. And when you go to the photorealistic part, that you say, hey, this is like a real person, then you have to deliver all the real person skills that a real person would have. And I think this is a real challenge to handle that with our technology at the moment. So this is the thing why something shouldn't be so much photorealistic, even if the resolution can bring that.
I think that's really a cool way to describe it. The uncanny valley's been in the computer game industry for many years, and the closer as you start to approach photorealism, but it's not good enough, it becomes creepy.
Yeah.
And so in other virtual worlds I own, we have that capability, but it's in games and people are much more forgiving there. In a professional environment, they're not. So we've opted for either 3D avatars, or you can switch to using video for your avatar as well, just having a floating frame there. So that's what meets people's expectations. But eventually,
in between.
You can't. You've got to take a jump across that chasm. But eventually, we'll get there. And some interesting things are happening in virtual reality. So when you're using a virtual reality headset and hand controllers, and they're being mapped into the 3D environment onto your avatar, the avatar is then starting to express itself with the way that you're used to seeing that person express themselves. And we're also starting to get VR headsets that will be able to track your mouth movements and your eye movements and translate them back into the virtual world, again on simplistic avatars. But those nuances will start to appear on these cartoon-like avatars as a beginning stage, and then we'll start progressing towards more photorealistic. So what you actually see in VR now is if you know a person well enough, you will probably be able to pick if it's the person or not based on the way they're moving, right? Like you can sometimes tell somebody walking down the street, you know them by the way they're walking. You're, oh, that's John. I think that's John because the way his stride is. So these sorts of things will make their way into the VR side first. And I think that's where we'll start to see this convergence come back down. And eventually, the whole video conferencing industry is going to be replaced by our digital twins. So this is a multi-trillion-dollar pivot that's going to happen. It's not right away, it's down the track, but there will be a point where our digital twins will be so mapped onto us correctly and take all of our nuances from camera that's in front of us or voice tone, those sorts of things will all be translated into the digital twin. And instead of me being up on the camera here, my digital twin will be, because I'll get better performance out of it, better lighting, I can change all aspects, but it'll be just as believable as being on video. And I think some video conferencing companies will be taken by surprise when that happens and their business model will be undercut. Others will leap forward into taking that opportunity. But that, a prediction for the not too distant future, maybe 4 or 5 years, that's something that's definitely coming.
Pretty cool.
Very exciting.
You talk about holograms, or isn't it a hologram then when we have the...
Well, I think you could project a digital twin because it's fully three-dimensional. You could walk around them. We have done experiments internally using equipment like the Microsoft HoloLens too, and other AR glasses where you can have people in the room with you and walk around them. And that sort of sensation is pretty compelling. And soon we'll see eye-based devices. So we'll have, I call it the race to the face. Where we'll have AR glasses. Instead of looking at our phone all the time, we'll just have stuff in our vision. And that's when you can have somebody projected in front of you as you're walking down the street and they're just floating with you as you're walking down the street, having a conversation. So things are going to get strange but interesting at the same time.
Well, you mentioned the digital twin. This is a perfect moment for me to remind our audience that we have a photo booth where you can take super cool screenshots of yourself and basically your digital twin. Just behind everybody, in the small screen next to Danny, you can see the screenshots you can take. So I would recommend, before we close this and go to the networking area, everyone to drop by and take a super cool reminder photo. Feel free to share it on the socials with our hashtag #HappyEventProfs, and you'll have a little reminder of this very, very interesting and exciting session we're having. So we've already reached 5:15 here in Germany. Might be different with the audience, which means our time here in the panel discussion is over. But as I just mentioned, we are moving to the networking area, which is not in here. We will teleport you. Danny, teleport is the way of movement within MootUp. We'll teleport you over to the networking area. You'll find the options to ask more questions to Danny and to Steffen there. I've seen there's a few more questions that people asked in our Q&A tool. Also in the chat here, I see a few more questions that's remained unanswered. So whoever has time and wants to find out a little bit more, please follow us into the networking area. Otherwise, just a quick reminder, the Happy Event Planner is a community for event professionals. So we do have a Slack community. My colleague Mia is going to post the link to join the Slack community in the chat right now. We'd love to have you there. You'll be the first to get the recordings of this session. You'll find out a lot more about what's going on with our next events and our next community activities and so on. So this is it here, guys. Thank you so much. This was really, really insightful. I'm quite sure everyone who joined us now is a semi or full experts on the metaverse topic, which is fantastic. That's what we're here for. I'd say the easiest way is that I say thank you for now. You guys disconnect, go over to the networking area, and I'll bring the rest of the guys with me. That's okay. So thank you very much. If anyone wants to give some applause to Danny and Steffen, /applause. Is that correct, Danny?
Yeah, or you can click on the smiley face in the bottom chat bar and choose applause there. I'm going to applaud myself, but I'm going to applaud the audience. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking the time to be with us today. I really appreciate it.